Hey everyone, in Sweetcast, I want to talk about Declan Shelvey. He posted some stuff about artists versus writers, and fair warning, he brings up the Bleeding Cool top 100 most powerful people in comics list, which is, I think, the terrible foundation to begin any kind of thread or discussion. But the topic in and of itself is really interesting, so we're going to get into it. In case you didn't know, Declan Shelvey is a very prominent and prolific comic book artist. I think he primarily works for Marvel Comics. He does some really great work. I think there are mixed opinions on how good of an artist he is, but I've got to say, as far as his storytelling goes, it's fantastic, and I assume that he must be really, really great at hitting deadlines because he gets stuff done. Before we get into the rest of this, I want to remind you that Downcast 2 is coming to Indiegogo very soon. You can sign up to the mailing list in the description below. Trust me, it'll be worth your time. All right, so let's get into this. Declan Shelvey says, "Hey, remember when I used to talk about art cred all the time? Well, I eased off a bit in 2019 as I felt it was encouraging toward a toxic environment on here, but it is still something I care about and is worth reasonable discussion. On that note, here's a thread." I'm going to say too, he talks a little bit about wanting to become a writer. I don't really want to throw shade, but I had to re-record this video because some of the grammar stuff really threw me off. So that would definitely be something that, you'd want to look at. All right, he continues. This is his thesis, essentially. This is interesting. While it's a completely subjective, if we're to look at it as a fairly accurate list of movers and shakers of the industry, it's worth noting, by my count, there are 100 out of 100. There are only three of them is solely an artist. Oh man, it's hard to make sense of that. He's talking about the list. There are only 3 artists on this list of 100 most powerful people. Now, you might be concerned if you're an artist. You got to remember, though, that Bleeding Cool makes up these nonsensical lists based off of nothing whatsoever. It's just whoever they happen to think of at the moment that they're making this list, because people drop off the list completely or come on the list out of nowhere. It means absolutely nothing, and this list is not something that you should aspire to be on. It just doesn't matter. All right, Declan continues. He says the list is understandably chock full of editors / publishers / marketers / retailers, etc. The people who get books made / sold. But from a creator standpoint, by my count, which may be off a bit, on that list there are 3 artists, 4 writers / artists, 1 colorist, and 29 dedicated writers. All right, so he's going to use these numbers to basically point to that writers have it better. They have more control in the industry than artists do, and it's more difficult for artists. It's a harder road to toe if you are an artist. I'm not sure that I agree with that, actually. Artists are in high demand. If you're a good artist, there's going to be much more opportunities for you. If you're a writer, you are very used to creating your own opportunities. Not that artists don't do that, but I think writers are forced to do it. And perhaps that might have something to do with why there are so many prominent writers, is because it takes like a certain number of writers that are so used to making it happen. They have to make their own opportunities and sort of hustle in this different kind of way. Not only that, but they get more shots to write more books because it takes less time to write a book. And so, you can be more prolific. Of course, having said that, Declan Shelvey, I mean, he's a fast artist. He gets stuff done. He is being published all the time. He's done so many different books. All right, here we go. Here's what he's taken from it. He says, "What I take from this is a writer, even a mid-level one, or a top colorist, has a better chance of gaining industry weight than most higher profile artists." I'm going to stop you there. You have to understand, though, this Bleeding Cool list does not actually mean that you have more weight, you have more power, nothing. This is literally a list of whomever Rich Johnston had on his mind over the past week or so that he was thinking about this list. That is all. Really, honestly, if you wanted to get on the list, you could probably just make sure that Rich Johnston sees your name often and that you're on his mind, and you might get on the list. This has literally nothing to do with actual influence on the industry itself. Declan continues, "It's not a competition, just goes to show how much harder it is to build a name for yourself as an artist." Again, I think I disagree with that. If you are a good artist, you're going to have opportunities, but I would say perhaps if artists, and I've said this before, and I think it's important, if you wanted to make a bigger name for yourself and have something that you own and you want to have more power in the industry, you could take that role and take an entrepreneurial role. You could actually hire out and hire a writer if you're not confident in your writing ability. Get a writer to do books for you. Work for hire. You own all of the rights to your own property. It's your story. At the end of the day, everything belongs to you. You're the one pushing it. You're the face of it. You could do that and hire a writer, and you would keep all of the credibility for it. And I realize this is a very indie comics look at things, but that's really the way that I see it. If you want to make that hustle, I would argue that has much less to do with being an artist versus a writer, rather than, just having your name out there more often because you can get through more things, and ultimately controlling the intellectual property. Now, if you're working for Marvel, which Declan Shelvey is, none of that really matters necessarily. I'd be interested to see how you would apply it in comics in the big two, though, I'm not super interested in doing it myself. All right, he continues. Also, it shows that you have a better chance to control your artwork / career by writing too. It's certainly a factor that encourages me to write so that I can always write for myself and aren't beholden to anyone / writer job offer. I also enjoy it creatively. Wow, I'm having a hard time reading this. One thing, if you want to be a writer, I think that's great, but there's just some grammar would go a far way. That's all I gotta say. All right, 6 of 6, last bit from Declan says, and to be clear, this is not an adversarial writers versus artists argument. Stop that. I'm just trying to illustrate that as an artist, the odds are stacked against you in having influence over your own career. So I encourage you to take as much control as you can. And I think he has a point there. And I do think it touches on some of the points I had before. If your goal is to do art and you want somebody to pay you a page rate to do art, you're going to have much less influence because you're being paid to do the art. In order to control your own career, it's going to have much less to do with being an artist versus a writer, and a lot more to do with taking control of your career. Generally speaking, writers are forced to do that. That's usually the only way that you can get in and get a shot to write something. You're forced to do it. On the other hand, even if you think about someone like Todd McFarlane, who's probably the biggest comic book artist I can think of, the biggest living comic book artist that took control of his own career, what did he do? He created his own intellectual property. He moved aside. He became the creative director of his own thing. And I don't even know when's the last time he actually drew Spawn, but he's got people working for him. He controls that IP. It is synonymous with Todd McFarlane. He's not working for a page rate. I don't know any artist that is working for a page rate, solely for a page rate, that is really, truly making a name for themselves and controlling their career. It has more to do with creating something that you own. It has less to do than being a writer. It really doesn't come down to artists versus writers. It's just that it comes down to working for a page rate. If you're getting paid to do your art and you're living off of that, that is nice. If you're a writer, chances are you can't really make a living off of your writing, no matter how much writing you do, unless you're really at a superstar level. All right, hold on, cut. I was editing this. I finished up the video and I realized I wanted to add this little tidbit I'd been thinking about and totally forgot to add it to the video. So I'm going to share you now, while I'm editing the video. So I used to work for this company that made indoor waterfalls. They were like flat, big stone, marble, sometimes slate panels. And they put little like a baffle at the top, and they had a pump in it, and it would squirt water out over the stone, and you'd have like a cascading sheet of water. And a lot of dentists would put them in their offices or waiting rooms, things like that. The company was definitely a luxury product. I think it takes a very specific kind of person or company to want one of those kinds of things. But that was a really interesting company. I talked to the owner a little bit, and he told me about the business model, and essentially it was an added value. I think that's the word he used, added value business. He didn't actually manufacture much of anything. He purchased the stones pre-cut to the sizes that he needed. He purchased the metal from a company, and they were actually bent into the right kinds of shapes and everything. The water tanks, the pumps were pre-made by a different company. Basically, he just had a list of items that he would purchase, and all his company did is assemble them into kits and make them fit together, just do some very basic sort of, retrofitting and add brackets and things like that. So you're essentially just making a kit and you're shipping it out to customers. Comics, believe it or not, work exactly the same way. If you are an artist, yes, you're making comics, but not really. You're making a part of comics. You are like the stone, right, in this little waterfall analogy. You're making a piece that's really important to the puzzle, but whoever it is that's owning it and printing the comic, they're the ones associated with the production of this product that we call comic books, because they're the ones technically making it and selling it. All they're doing is hiring the right people to perform the right kinds of services, to make the right kinds of pieces. They're hiring letterers, artists, writers in some cases, putting it all together, working with a printer to slap it all together and ship it out to people. And so it really is not surprising when you look at this from a business perspective that artists don't really make a huge name for themselves, as Declan Shelvey has laid it out. You'd have to really go above and beyond within that system to really make a name for yourself. But that's basically the way that it is everywhere in any kind of industry. If you're working for the man, you're working for the man. You're there for a paycheck and nothing else. But comics definitely are a business, and it's basically in the best interest of the business owner to decide how they're putting together their creative teams and how they're going to market their product. And of course, it's going to benefit them. So if you want a piece of that, the best thing to do is to be in charge of your own thing. Comicsgate has done it time and time again. You can see so many great examples, and I would argue that many of the artists in Comicsgate are actually some of the bigger names. And I think it has a little bit less to do with the fact that they're doing art and more to the fact to do that they're the ones pushing the thing. They're the face of the company, and yes, they're also doing their own art. Anyway, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments below what you think about all of this discussion. And I'll tell you, I'm with Declan on this point, that I think it's an awesome place to be both a proficient writer and a proficient artist, doing both well and being able to have that much more control and stability over your own career. I think it's a great thing, which is why I'm learning to draw better. I still have a long ways to go, so writing will be the focus for now. If you want to read some of my writing, Downcast 2 is coming out to Indiegogo very soon. You'll be able to get the first one and the second one all together. If you haven't got into the story, please check it out in the description below, and I will see you next time.